Hello, I'm Stacie Ysidro over here at St. Pete Retreat, and I am talking with Tim. And hopefully you caught the first video that we just did that gave a little background information of Tim's before story. And right now we're going to dive into what were the needle movers, or like the top three transformational things that you've experienced on this journey of integrating sexuality and pleasure into the wholeness of you. So yeah, let's go ahead and pick up there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there really were three big things that really kind of clicked in. And so I think that the first step on this path was just allowing myself to be open to receiving pleasure from the world in all of its ways of coming out. Again, as we shared in that first segment, culturally, we often live in these stoic mentalities where we praise the men and women who and others who deny themselves, who live a Spartan life. And we have deified and kind of placed on a pedestal this idea of deprivation as being a higher level or spiritual path that we should aspire to. And aestheticism is one of the manifestations of this, which is present in every single world tradition that we have. Yeah, but that really just doesn't work for most of us, I don't think, to live that deprived life. And so I had to really open myself up to saying that I'm not being selfish if I decide that I want to seek out and find pleasure for myself and put myself's pleasures first.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I listened to this Buddhist Rinpoche, and he says that in the text they call it degenerate times. And not degenerate probably is like what we would use the word today, as like a moral, like something's wrong with this person, they're degenerate. But as far as our ability to maintain a spiritual connection and a sense of self and peace within ourselves, because in this time that we're in, there are so many distractions. There
Yes.
are so many things that take us outside of ourselves, and that we can get carried away on, which is what you were saying, going into the extremes of like deprivation or the overflow into the excess and more. So I love that you bring that up. So right now, where we're at today, this is so relevant, because so much of our world takes us away from ourselves and pushes us into extremes. And yeah, we are mostly, more healthy and satisfied and feel more integrated when we're in a wholeness space. And I also love that you pointed to the allowing yourself to receive. And I think that this is like one of the main reasons I really wanted to have this conversation with you and share it, is because everyone, you know, that I have ever met, there's a part of them that, questions, do I really deserve this? Allowing ourselves to receive and somehow blocking the flow of abundance or pleasure into our lives because of all of these other things. And so that journey of learning self-care is not selfish. If you are caring for yourself and you are in overflow, it's like serving from your saucer, not from your cup. So anyone that wants to open to allow themselves to receive more, how did this happen? Where are you at with this?
Well, I'm in a pretty good place right now as far as the ability to receive. And because what I've spent a long time doing since kind of the existential crisis that hit me was to cultivate an honest sense of self-worth. I had to really do the work and the work that was hard for me to realize that I wasn't being selfish if I acknowledged and talked about what my needs were. When I established clear boundaries of acceptable versus unacceptable as far as infringing on and placing on me, or at the worst and darkest times, taking from me that which I did not want to give in the first place, but really holding myself of value. And one of the things that just keeps coming up time and time again, um, in the readings that I've done, and we've shared about Esther Perel's talks about how no one person can satisfy another person, but really no one experience is going to be the sole outlet for any one person to fill their cup. So if no one person can do that for you, there is one person that has to always show up, and you have to show up for yourself first and foremost. And you can't show up for yourself if you don't hold yourself in a high enough regard that you are deserving of being in that place to begin with. If you don't feel that you have a place in the world, then there's no
Yeah.
path forward. That's the first
So
step.
how do you develop that? Like, what were some things that really helped you looking back to develop the sense of self-worth enough to be like, hey, I deserve to feel good. I don't deserve to be suffering all the time. Like, how did that happen for you?
Was an honest appraisal about what my behaviors allow others to do to me, and how my behaviors impact and influence how other people interact with me, and how I engage in the world at large. So, was I really honoring when I say no to somebody else that no meant no? Or was I finding other outlets to say, well, I'm not able to give you that, but I can give you this, which was a real trick that I found, which is when I started to use that, and that was modeled through some coaching, it was like, wow, because now they're the ones telling me no, I don't want that from you. So it turns it, I don't look like I'm the jerk in the situation, denying them what they want from me. All of a sudden, I've said, well, that's just out of my bounds. I can't do that for you. But what I could do is this. Oh, well, I don't want that. It's like, then maybe you should find somebody else then, because I just offered you something that I could honestly give you from my heart. And that wasn't something that you could take. And see, that really means that I'm worthy of having a voice in this exchange, and that I just shouldn't allow people to walk all over me. And that was a real simple little fix that I did in how I interacted with people. And that allowed me to start to put up some soft boundaries where they were really the ones saying no, and I wasn't saying no. So when you think about the energy or the social exchange there, I'm not denying them. They're denying themselves of an opportunity to avail themselves to something I would love to give to them. And I don't think in our relations we think enough, and I hadn't thought enough about the power of shifting the perspective a little bit differently. So I really felt that that was one of the real key tricks. And you and some other people have helped me to understand that that's a really powerful thing. And it's a way to self empower ourselves, because we can't honestly engage in this work if we don't empower ourselves to allow our voice to be heard.
Yeah, I love that. We do talk about that. It's how can our no inform our yes? Because a lot of times we know what we don't want and what we don't like, and we usually just stay there. We usually don't go far enough into actually, well, what do we want? What do we like? What are we okay with? And I think that's because most of the time people don't really know. Like, it took me a while to figure that out. And I still feel like things are shifting as I grow and change. So it's like my sexual values or values in general are different today than what they were 5 or 10 years ago, because I've had different experiences. I'm in different relation. I'm in a different part of my life. And it really sounds like you were able to get clear on what your values are as a person in general. And then you're able to apply that through the coaching to your sexual values and the values of your relationships. So, like, getting that self-worth, achieving the self-worth, um, part of that journey was really getting to know yourself and what are your values and where do you stand. And then it sounds like being able to share that with another person was
Correct.
huge.
Yeah, I think that one of you hit on two key things there, and the one that really is kind of the second key for me was really sitting with what did I really want, which I want to return to here in a second. But I think the other thing that really is important is in a lot of kind of traditions that maybe some of your listeners would relate to, yoga, this is a real important thing. Taking our practice off our mats, and then taking and bringing on our mats, and maybe leaving it, but working through some stuff on that as well. I think that it's really a bidirectionality here. And then that helps to do the interweaving of the components of our lives because of it. So it really starts to inform back and forth. My personal life was transformed. My professional life has been deeply transformed about what I allow others to take from me now, and the boundaries that I set. And it meant that there were some places that were now unsustainable as relations in all of these spheres of my life, because I valued and placed my needs as just as important as others in the situation. And I was finding effective ways of communicating what my needs were. And I was finding that not all relations in the world were going to allow that to be honored. And I can't engage in a relation where I don't feel that I and my needs and values are being seen and honored and heard. And I think this is a slightly different variation on what we often hear currently in the zeitgeist around this talk. That's a little bit different because we place our values on an equal pedestal. My needs are just as important as someone else. I don't place them above somebody else's, but I do know that if I don't have my needs in a relationship met, then I can't truly serve out of a place, and it can devolve into resentment. But the person that I have to resent is myself for allowing that to happen in the first place. So then it becomes a shame that I allowed myself to do this again and again and again and find myself in the same bloody position over and over again. And many of your listeners can probably relate to this of being felt that feeling of being trapped. And when we can break free of those shackles and free ourselves, that's the true liberation that we have to seek for ourselves, even if it's a micro level, and just fleeting moments of each little drop that we give to ourselves on this path and journey to really a liberated soul.
Yeah, that's beautiful, beautiful words. And I also heard you say that by going on this journey of including sexuality and pleasure and integrating that into the wholeness of your being, that because of this, you have actually seen positive shifts in all the other areas of your life.
Yeah.
So by addressing, your self-worth, needs, desires, wants, pleasure, pain in that personal sexual space, you've been able to apply those same principles that you're learning into your work and to your relating to others and to probably family
Mhm.
relationships.
Yeah, the tools are very useful tools. They're kind of multitaskers in that way. The domain that you're applying them in could be hypersexualized or pleasure, or it could be over here, but it could also just be. And a lot of this is how do I relate in a consensual way that's mutually respectful and built in a safe container that allows for everybody to feel that they're seen, heard, and they get their needs met. Who doesn't want that in every aspect of their life? Who doesn't want a set of tools that you can take in? And if you can do this in the bedroom and in different spaces that our sex positive community lives in, then you could do that in any aspect of your life if you have the strength of character to look within yourself and honor and respect those desires within yourself as being worthy of at least being heard and seen. They don't have to be reciprocated. You have to find sustainable outlets in consensual ways to fulfill those. But that's true of anything. And the work that you have to do on those relations and how you communicate and work within that space is a valuable piece that I actually find that I now demand more of others in different situations than I used to. And I walk away from situations in a different way than I used to. Really, it's a walking away because it's just I know that it's unsustainable and it's not going to be a place that honors the true intentions that we thought were set. And so honoring a container is also the same as just honoring any type of an agreement within a relationship within the world and your life. And from what I've come to ascertain and how it applies to me.
Yeah, just it sounds like being in alignment with your values, with what you're agreeing to, um, what you're choosing or choosing not to engage in, and
Hmm.
that really being in alignment. And I know from personal experience, when I'm in alignment with my values, I feel safe and I feel like I'm worth something. When I'm out of alignment with my values, or I'm not really sure what that value is, when there's some cloudiness or gray area, it's not real clear, then I tend to experience more like struggle or questioning or a lowering of like my own value or worth, or a lowering of someone else's value or worth for that matter, but it's that being out of alignment creates unsafety and creates disruption there.
Yeah.
So really being in alignment, um, yeah, that's huge.
Which goes
What
back to that
else?
equanimity.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, the out of alignment is the counterpoint to equanimity, of being in alignment, of being in balance, of being able to hold what seem to be two dualistic points of view as being actually a unified whole, which is unified within ourselves as how we interact with the world. Those dualities have to be shattered, and that is often what we learn a lot of as far as the spiritual traditions of the world, is how we shatter those dualities and come into equanimity first and foremost within ourselves, right? We sit zazen to sit with ourselves, to embody the work. We go to the Dharma to learn the teachings and the writings, which are insufficient to fully embody within ourselves. So we sit with ourselves within our space to come to a unified understanding of what this practice is.
Mm, I love that. So what else? Lots of sitting with yourself,
Well,
allowing
it really
yourself to receive. What else would you say are your big deals that have gotten you to where you are?
So you do an honest appraisal and you start to explore the world in fun ways to figure out what gets you off, right? In any kind of simple ways. What's it going to be that's going to be the little things that I can have? And then once you start to develop what it is that you really want, you can start to cultivate for yourself sustainable wells that you can go and draw from, which are going to be in alignment with your values and your alignment with others and the world around you. So finding that outlet to cultivate sustainable outlets of sources of pleasure and joy in your life and happiness that you can always go to, and that you can have these in ways. And it takes lots of little drops of these that I found. It can't be one person. It can't be one thing. It can't just be that I have my yoga practice that brings me joy. It can't just be sitting zazen that brings me joy. It can't just be my outings with others in my life that bring me joy. It can't just be my relations with certain communities that bring me joy. It can't just be one food that brings me joy. It has to be a whole tapestry of things that I can just go to and I can pull from and have to feed myself. And take ownership of doing that for myself and not expecting or holding anybody accountable for my pleasure and my happiness but myself, because I'm worthy of putting myself first.
Yes, I love that. What you're saying about finding different outlets to feed yourself. And some of the work that we've done, and people can look up the blueprints, there's 5 different blueprints. And so I'm hearing you call out, hey, this is a sensual blueprint feeding with food, or, this Zazen and yoga is very energetic. And
Correct.
so it's like feeding yourself in all of your blueprints, because we all have some of them, and that really leads you into a sense of wholeness. And also it's like not putting your eggs in one basket, and it's also not putting the responsibility for your pleasure and happiness onto someone or something else.
That's right.
So I love that you highlight your how you've been able to start to take that personal responsibility for your pleasure, and not leaving that up to exterior circumstances. And I think that's a huge piece that people can take away from this, is being responsible for your own pleasure, being responsible for your own orgasm. And if we don't know, how can someone else know? Like, we're not mind readers. We're not going to know unless someone tells us something. And if we don't know, then how are they supposed to know?
Yeah, it's really funny because as I hear you share that reflection back on what I was sharing, that I really think that it seems corny, but that you have to be the change you want to see in the world. If we don't model feeding ourselves, then we can't hold other people accountable for emotionally regulating for themselves and not putting that out us, not putting us responsible for them. So a lot of people who are inherently givers will often feel depleted because so many people will come and suck off of them. So as by coming into myself and placing myself first, I'm able to live from a real valid place of authenticity when I now share with others. I don't emotionally regulate for people anymore. That's not my responsibility. If you can't have me with you 24/7, that means if I enable you to have moments of clarity, peace, and okay at these moments, that's not sustainable for you. I'm willing to come up beside you and go on this journey together, but you can't latch on me and have me drag you through life. because nobody should be dragged behind a car through life. That is just a miserable existence. And I was never doing anybody any favors of service by not modeling first and foremost that I take care of myself now. And I make sure that my needs are met because I know what they are. And they're not asking too much of others in the world. They're just putting what I need out there. And it's not an imposition to myself or anybody else. But I don't expect anybody else to feed that for me. I don't expect anybody else to do anything that's with outside of their bounds. I don't expect anybody else to take care of me at this stage and point.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's like you can't do the work for them.
No.
And like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink kind of thing.
Yeah. One of the things that I say now is my bloody savior complex is well dead and buried.
Oh, I love that.
And a lot of us men in my position often have this horrible, horrible predisposition to think that we're the knight in shining armor meant to save the world. And that is a bloody fallacy. And it's really destructive for the world at large. And if we can't even take care of ourselves to then be fueled in a way to come up into service along others in a shared vision and a shared mission, then we can't do anything. So I think that the first and foremost is I had to really get real with myself about why am I engaging and what am I getting out of a situation? Is it truly from a place of elevating everybody to their own independent self organism who, when the time comes, can self exist and feed themselves and take care of themselves? As a parent, which you and I both are, that's really critical, right? Is we want to raise, well respect, well thoughtful, good human beings that can take care of themselves and go off and thrive. And in some of my adult relationships, I don't always find that to be the case. And with myself, I found that I often was sacrificing my own ability to thrive in the world for what I thought was this ego selfless way of living. And it truly wasn't.
Yeah, like being the martyr or something.
Yeah, I was key to put myself on the cross first and foremost. And that was just not a good place to be, not a good look.
I know, and it's like fed to us that it's like honorable or something.
Yeah, it
You
is.
know, it's like people, Gabor Mate talks about it a lot and about how the people that like only focus on everyone else, and it's like they went to work sick, they went to work through their cancer treatment, they never stopped, taking so and so to their doctors. Like they never did anything to care for themselves while they were going through a hard time.
That's right.
They continued to care for others when nobody was caring for them, and how that has led to continued mental, physical, emotional ailments, addiction, physical dis-ease, disease, when we're so overly focused on everyone else and being that martyr and not taking care of ourselves. Like we don't get the gold medal for you know dying for someone else to thrive like in life.
Yeah. And I know that some listeners might be saying, well, this just sounds like hokey hoo-ha and woohoo and all the things that I just can't get down with. It's like I'm not suggesting that you reconfigure your entire life and every minute of your day is just for you. We have to be of service. We have to engage the world. But if we can't find and hold 15 minutes in the day for us to have contemplation or just for ourselves or even half an hour or an hour out of 24 hours of the day, um, then are we really being of service to ourselves? I mean, I'm not suggesting that we reconfigure our entire lives to be this hedonistic, self driven, pleasure seeking machine, but I'm saying for many of us, we don't even have 10 minutes that we can carve out that we can say are our own, that we're not
Yeah,
actually doing something in pursuit or service of what other people are asking of us. And if
yeah, and
that's where
even
you
like
find
as a
yourself, this
parent.
is the message I'm sharing.
Yeah, and even as a parent, especially when you have young kids, you don't even get to go to the bathroom by
Nope.
yourself or take a
No,
shower by yourself.
no.
Yeah.
No, and as
And
a
I
working dad, I can feel that. I mean, I have a lot of responsibilities for a little human being who's here because a decision was made by two other people that he would be here. And so I get that. That never shuts off in my head, but I do have to start to find ways of allowing myself to unrelease from that in ways that can replenish myself and I can fill my cup. And I know that this has been a mantra for a long time now in the zeitgeist, especially after the pandemic and during the pandemic. But I don't often feel that men in my position are the ones that are also sharing that, in a 21st century modern reality, we're going to be dealing with things that are the first time for our gender to be dealing with. And some of these are going to be when you're really a primary caregiver to a child in a really real way. How do you source yourself? How do you take care of yourself in addition to maybe having a job or having full-time responsibility for a home? So I think that it's a time now that as we start to branch into a more postmodern world where we have gender equality, I think we need to say, well, as men step up and do their job, what's our role and how do we source ourselves? And I know that wasn't supposed to be the topic of this, but it felt natural to kind of go here. That I think that I represent a group of people who have been told often now that it's not our time anymore because the last century of the human race has been our time. So it's like, well, but I didn't think that we were now in a zero sum mindset. I thought we had a pretty abundant set mindset. So isn't there a place for me at the table to have my group talked about and about how we can respectfully engage in this new reality or cultivate this in a way that we can put ourselves in the mix of saying that I too am deserving of having my needs met?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're in a time of, the gender fluidity and role fluidity and sexual fluidity. And, labels are great because we get to identify as something and feel part of something, but at a certain point, they can be very separating. And so I'm loving what you're saying is like, hey, everyone's here at the table and we're seeing everyone in their own for who they are, and like we're kind of all going through some of these same things, and different groups of people have been dissected out of certain things, whether it is emotions or sexuality or marriage or legal rights or, sexual rights, all of the things. And really, we all have the same needs and desires as human beings. And it's something that everyone can relate to as a human. And so you're right, everyone deserves to have that seat at the table, and everyone deserves to have a piece and time for themselves so that we really can be present with others.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we need a good old carpenter to build us a bigger table. And a lot of people seem to have a carpenter that they want to follow around and listen to. So I think what he might do right now is just pull out his tools and build a bigger table.
It's beautiful. So is there anything else, like any other big tips? I mean, we've given quite a few so far, to help people that are really on this journey to integrating sexuality and pleasure into their lives.
Yeah, I mean, the only other tip I give for this video would be to really be thoughtful and intentional, set up time and space for yourself, and you're going to slip and screw up along the way. You're going to not know what you want, and that's okay. There's going to be a lot of ambiguity, and there's going to be a lot of wrestling with yourself inside about what do I really want, and then it's going to be, well, how do I know what I want if I don't even know what the possibilities are? And so it's really going to take each and every person finding their own unique path to exploring and understanding within their own ethos and moral structures about what feeds them so that they can stay true to that. And in the process, maybe reconfiguring and realigning and having a new understanding about what they really hold to be their core values and where they really want to see themselves in the world. And it doesn't have to be a midlife crisis and me getting a Ferrari anymore. It can be me sitting down and saying that I can come first and that my midlife crisis is just waking up and realizing I've been completely removing myself and my needs from the equation for the past 25 years of my life and what the fuck. And that seems to be the definition of what many people would call a midlife crisis. And it doesn't have to be going out and getting that sports car or what traditionally is thought of, but it could be a different path forward for some people. And I chose a different path forward for my midlife crisis.
Yay, celebrations. This is amazing. So we're going to pause here and we're going to do one more, and we're going to close out with where are you at today? What other advice do you have for people that are on this journey, and words of wisdom that you could share from what you've experienced so far? So to be continued, and part 3.